Hey everybody, welcome to the Sunday Slowdown at J&J Acres. This is our little corner of the world of the homesteadnetwork.com. So if this is your first time finding our live YouTube video and you're wondering what this is all about, we are a small family farm in Mississippi, and we like showing people on our YouTube channel what we're doing around the property, the animals we're raising, the crops we're growing, the things we're fixing up, and just trying to get things done. So if that type of topic, homesteading, gardening, farming, animal husbandry, or if you're interested in prepping, whatever. Homeschooling, there you go. Head over to the homesteadnetwork.com and get a list of the shows that are there. There are shows, I believe, every day of the week, and there are many days of the week where you can watch live family farm related YouTube channels for many hours in a row. So, okay. Alright, so if you're new to the show, or just for the sake of reminding you, if you have a question, make sure you type it in all caps. Jennifer is monitoring the chat feed while I'm staring at the camera and trying to keep the conversation going, and she makes sure that I get the information on what the questions are. And folks, let me tell you, we need a lot of questions tonight. I don't have near the amount of preparations for tonight. We've been quite busy this weekend.
Yeah.
So much so that normally the weekend is when I film all my videos for next week's YouTube videos. I haven't filmed a single thing.
You haven't?
Not a thing.
Not one?
I have some ideas.
Well, ideas are good.
Yeah. So maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon or Thursday afternoon, if I can get home in enough time before it gets dark, I can get something out there on YouTube. So we'll see. One thing I really want to share with you guys, we'll keep the same format we've kept in the past. We'll talk about what's happened over the last week. We do have a couple little videos we want to show you coming from the deer cams. We've got two new kinds of animals you've never seen before, that we've never seen before on the deer cam. So we'll show that with you. And one of them is two-footed, so stick around for that. And then we'll talk about what's coming up in the next week and get your Q's and A's around that time. So,
for all those out there in Radio Land that are wondering how I've been doing, since I saw a few questions in there about it, my migraines have been off and on plaguing me as usual, but I've been getting by, trucking, as they would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doing my best to make sure that everything runs smoothly in the background around here.
Yeah.
Trying to.
Alright, so again, if you have questions, all caps in the comments there. Jennifer will monitor that and get them over to me. And we're already stacking up the queue, so make sure you get your question in early so we can get to it for you. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about what you saw last week, and we'll talk about how the week went in general. So you saw on October the 18th, that was a rare, I don't normally put videos out that day of the week, but that was that October the 18th, 2010 is when my mother passed away. So this was 6 years since she passed away, and you know, my mom and I were really close. And then when I married Jennifer, my mom and Jennifer were really close.
She actually threatened Jared that if he didn't marry me, she was going to adopt me.
Well, yeah, so there you are. And of course, she was really close with all the grandchildren, all of our children that got to know her.
Yeah, especially Brandon, the oldest.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't know how to explain it. Normally, if somebody I know passes away, it doesn't hit me very hard. You know, it's like, well, you know, I'm sad that they're gone, and I'm sorry I won't get to see them the next week, and I take the time to think about the things that I learned from them, or what kind of things about them I'm going to probably keep around for the rest of my life.
Right, and you were my strength when my father passed away, too.
Yeah. But there's something more than that with my mom. So if you watch that video, you saw I kind of got choked up. That wasn't acting. That was me trying to get through the video.
He wouldn't even talk about the video before he went and did it. He wouldn't let me be his cameraman for it, anything. He had to go out there and do it by himself.
And I really just, Jennifer set up the camera and focused in on me, and then I asked her to walk away because I knew I wouldn't get through the video if I had her in the background and I could see her there. And I just talked to the camera and did a run through as quick as I really could about it and got choked up there at the end. But one thing I can say is we've had a lot of disappointments in our gardening efforts. Our apple trees aren't growing real well and things like that. So it's one thing that's nice is that the rose bush that we planted for her has been doing so well.
It's never even stuttered. It's never had any problems.
It didn't even blink when we had a delivery guy run over half of it.
Yeah, no kidding.
No kidding. He really did. He cut off like half of it. Just drove right over it. Yeah. Anyway. But it bounced back from that. It's put on a lot of blossoms, and now I'm going to have to do some pruning to it and get the bush even on all sides so it doesn't have problems again in the future. But
now one thing
really
it doesn't like is when we cut a bloom off, the blooms do not like sitting in water.
Yeah. If you know anything about floral design or anything, so this is a Chrysler Imperial Hybrid Tea Rose. That's the big long title for it. I don't know the botanical name right off, but I'm sure if you search that you'll get the right rose. But if you know anything about how to make them last longer, I don't know if there's, I'm sure there's probably roses that are hybrids that were specifically developed or bred for how long they last. But these are long stem roses, and so it would be nice if rather than just have them out in the yard, we could take a bloom or two every once in a while, bring them in the house, because it is a very, very fragrant, very beautiful velvet red rose.
You can smell it from across the yard.
Yeah.
And we have a big yard.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So maybe there's a trick on how to make the roses last longer. I mean, it lasts what, like 3 days?
If that, 2 or 3 days.
It doesn't last very long.
And we've tried plain water, we've tried sugar.
Yeah.
We've tried aspirin.
Yeah. Tried a couple different tricks we Googled, but didn't really quite work out. So anyway, so I do have I meant to do this at the very beginning, but I forgot. A bit of what do they call it when you write in print and you're the newspaper and you wrote something wrong, and a retraction.
A retraction.
I do have a bit of a retraction. If you watched that video the first time, or if you watched it, and you'll notice in the video I say that my mother was the worst mother ever. Please remember, it has been 6 years since I've had the pleasure of teasing my mother with these funny titles that my sisters and I had for her. But my sister, in a very loving way, reminded me.
And they didn't tease her every day about it. It was just every now and then, like every few months or something like that. I mean, I might have heard it just a couple times when I was...
But the correct phrase for the joke was she was the meanest mom ever. And I guess that probably does have really in the language of the definitions of the words, it ain't too much better. But it does sound a little bit better. It doesn't have such a bad connotation to it. So if you missed that video, go back and watch it. Basically, the idea is, since mom was mom and made us do all the things that you can imagine a mom making children do, she was the meanest mom ever. So we always like to joke around with her about that, even after we had grown up and had our own kids and whatever. So.
And I try my hardest to live up to it.
There you go. All right, so moving on to something else. You also saw a video about the citrus trees that are growing. Those are a lime and a lemon tree. And one concern, Jennifer, I don't think you've had a chance to go back and look at this in the comments, but a few people brought up a concern that those may have been grafted trees. And if they died all the way back down to the roots and are now growing again, we might be growing rootstock and not the grafted. And so all we can really wait for is to see what kind of fruit comes on it and whether we like it. So we're going to wait and find out. Those were simply bought at Lowe's many years ago. They stayed in containers for several years. And then early this spring we planted them right there on the south of our home, where it's nice and bright and sunny, with the hopes that they would overwinter better. So we got that area all cleaned up and mulched up and hopefully ready for them to face a winter. But
we were even surprised that the roots lived.
yeah, we really were. When we had a hard frost one day and they didn't get covered up like they should have. They didn't get brought in the house like they should have. And it died all the way back. And when they started putting up sprouts the next year, we were really surprised that it started growing again. So we'll just see how that goes. All right. Next, you saw the pruning the grapes and the feeding the pigs, and that was just a routine thing. One question that was brought up in that video was that somebody thought we should, or they thought that it was a custom of pruning the vines back further. Absolutely. This was not the full winter pruning. We do have videos on that where I take it all the way back to the main vines. This was just a get the grapevine off of the house. So
yeah,
that's all that was. And then I just showed you that when we have greenage like that we trim back, there's in that video, and there's no video of this, but Brandon has been running the bushwhacker, or the brush cutter, whatever you want to call it. The brush cutter, the big, bullhorn brush cutter in the woods, cutting down saplings, and the kids take that greens to the pigs as well. So whenever we have the opportunity to get the pigs some fresh foliage, then that's what we do. And I just wanted to show that to you guys in case somebody's not doing that and they can make use out of it. Alright, and last and not least, as far as the videos are concerned, unless you're a Patreon over at Patreon, and if you are, then there was another video, a secret video, that's for our patrons only. So you can head to patreon.com/JandJAkers and learn about Patreon and what that is, and if you want to support us at the right level, get access to the secret squirrel videos just for those folks.
How many videos do you have on there now?
I will have to check. Let me look at the playlist. I can do that very quickly. But the last video on the regular channel was about the bees. There are currently 7 videos in that playlist, and I add one about every week. So, and they all are behind the scenes things. So it's, maybe some footage that got deleted out of a current video. Maybe it's some secret squirrel insider information about some upcoming projects, or things like that. So anyway, or sometimes it's like the one that came out just this morning was more of a get into our personal life kind of thing, just sharing something with you. But at the same time, there was some secret squirrel insider information in that too. So anyway, moving along.
Before you give it away.
Yeah, the last video that you saw on the channel this week was about the beehive colony. So, to our shock and amazement, I had spent the morning, well actually the afternoon before, cleaning out all of our honey extracting equipment. I went and cleaned out the honey extractor, the tub that you use to cap the wax or uncap the wax, everything got a good cleaning, because it's on our back deck, and what we did last time we had a honey extraction is extract the honey and then put all the equipment on the back deck, and then the honeybees come and take the honey back and put it back in the hive. So anything that we may have lost because we just couldn't get that last few drops out or something like that, or tired of waiting for it or whatever,
we don't actually lose.
Yeah, the bees just collect it and take it back to the hive, and we'll get it next time. So it's no big problem. But anyway, so it sat out on the back deck. I cleaned it up, got it all ready, because I just knew we were going to get 5 gallons or more out of this hive, because that's what we got last time. And
the last time we were in that hive, it was thriving so hard.
Yeah.
And
the last time we went in that hive, it wasn't even proper summer yet.
Yeah.
And we had taken 3 or 4 frames because somebody wanted to buy some honey from us, and I didn't want to sell the honey I'd already put up for myself. So I went in there, and it being early enough in the year, got a couple frames off of it, and it was packed. We had 2 brood boxes, which are deeps, so they're the 9-inch ones.
Mm-hmm.
And they were packed slam full of bees, and eggs everywhere, brood everywhere. and honey in the honey super, and things were going great. But the honey super wasn't completely full. It had about 6 of the 10 frames full of comb. And so because of that, I decided not to put on another honey box. So that got left alone. So now the thought was, okay, well, we'll go back and take a look at things, and with any luck we can take the whole honey super, because usually they put a couple frames of honey down in the deep, and with our warm climate that should get our bees through the year. But really we were going to be pretty happy if we could just take 5 frames of honey off the that would get us through the winter just fine.
Yep.
So we went in there, and what we found instead is what you saw in the video. We found just tons of hive beetles.
Boy.
Tons of hive beetles. Never did see the queen. Did kind of a panic situation and got 5 decent frames. The only frame that had brood and larva on it, and some honey and some pollen and things like, and some filled out comb into a nuke box.
Now, though we didn't see the queen, we're certain we did get the queen into the new hive box, because the bees that were on the old hive box all went to the new box.
Yep.
They were all attracted to it. So there was some kind of a scent on the new box that told all the bees that that's where she was.
Yeah. So I can't say that we did it right or we did it wrong, but what I can say is it looks like it's working. And basically we're in panic mode of don't let the colony die.
Yeah.
We want the colony to survive. So if we've got to overwinter them in a nuke, that can be done here in Mississippi. And if we have to feed them, we will probably feed them their own honey. We still have their honey here in jars back from spring, and we can feed that back to them if we have to. So we'll just see how things go.
We've got so many friends that could sell us local honey that we could do that too.
And we've got, we hit down into the 30s for the first time in the year,
it felt
or in
so
the season.
Good.
But we probably got a couple weeks until we hit that first frost. So if we can pay really close attention to the forecast, then we can get in there one more time just to see how well they're reestablishing themselves.
Yeah.
And if they're reestablishing themselves really well, we can better understand where we're going to go for the year, for the rest of the winter. So, all right. So, now that I told you all about what videos have been done, let us tell you what other drama happened. At the same day, on the same day that I'm not telling anybody what kind of video
Hold on just a second.
I'm shooting.
It took one hive, and it was their first year to get the full 5 gallons out of that hive that first time.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you get a lot of honey out of a hive. I mean, there's just a lot. I mean, a lot.
We were shocked the first time that we opened up that hive and they showed us how to pull honey out of that hive, and it just kept coming.
Yeah. It really is pretty amazing how much honey you get out of them.
Yeah.
All right, so on the same day that I'm not telling anybody what kind of video I'm filming because I'm worried about choking up, we had some family friends over, and do you want to say anything about why that was? Or
well, she was having family issues, and so I was watching her kids.
Well,
so
her dad had been injured.
Yeah.
And so she had a lot of trips to the other side of the state, going to the hospital and things like that. And so Jennifer had tried to set up a quiet evening where they have 5 children as well. And so rather than her have to come all the way back from the hospital and worry about feeding her family, she said, just come crash at our house for the afternoon. We'll have food. We'll just watch TV. You don't even have to talk to us. Just relax here rather than having to worry about running your house. And then about an hour or two into me being home, you want to drop the bombshell?
I can drop the bombshell. Several of the kids, ours and theirs, were out playing on the trampoline. And though we've told them time and again not to roughhouse on the trampoline, that's exactly what they were doing. They were roughhousing on the trampoline. And Kaylin, our 6-year-old, was down on her hands and knees for some reason, and one of theirs launched up into the air and landed on, as far as I understand it, on the back of her leg. And she broke her leg again.
Yeah.
But it's the opposite leg as the one 10 months ago.
Yeah, so
in the exact same place.
If you follow me on Facebook, then you heard this story before. You heard it just the day after Christmas, because that's when they got the trampoline, and she broke her leg then. And
Tell them how that happened.
Well, it was right below the knee. And the story we got from the children was, you know how trampolines are. If you jump, you can only get a certain height. But if you have a second person on the trampoline and you time it just right, you can get that super jump. It'll launch you out in the sky. Well, unfortunately, that super jump happened without any prior notice. And so Kaylin fell funny and landed on the padding on the springs. And somehow broke her leg then, and it was right below her knee. And so this second time, when it was just below her knee again, is where she was saying that her leg hurt and she refused to move it and all this other kind of stuff. We couldn't help but make the presumption that she broke her leg again, as in she re-broke
the same break.
Right, so we didn't even think twice about it. It wasn't until
the orthopedic.
Yeah, we go to the ER. She gets X-rayed. We find out it is broken. They wrap her up in the splint half casty thing that the ER does. You go in 2 days later to the orthopedic, and the orthopedic says, and goes and pulls her chart from 10.5 months ago and says, "Did you know this is the other leg?"
So now we are going to be talking about bone density and asking about bone density and finding out whether or not this is a coincidence because of too many kids on the trampoline roughhousing, or if this is a Kaylin issue.
Yeah, if there's some underlying medical concern we need to know more about.
Yeah, so
anyway, so that was our big drama for the week.
In the meantime, we have cracked down on the roughhousing on the trampoline.
Yeah. So, that's fun. All right, what else can I tell you? We got a lot of questions to go back to here in just a minute.
It does have a safety net around it.
Yeah, look, I'm telling you. I spent 6 months researching trampolines. This is the safest trampoline that they sell.
Yeah.
It's got the highest ratings. It's got the thickest steel.
Not a single other child has hurt themselves on this trampoline except Kaylin.
Yeah.
And she hasn't even hurt herself either. Both times she got hurt by another child.
Yeah. Every time. It's crazy. Well, let's see. So I think I'm going to wait. I was debating whether or not I wanted to answer these questions before I move on, but I think I want to show the videos, and then we'll get into all the questions, even though most of these are about what we've already talked about. So,
sounds good.
I got 2 videos to show you, a short one, and at night the camera only records a 1 minute long video, and I imagine that's for power consumption. During the day it will record a 2 minute long video, and I can't find any setting that differentiates one or the other in the camera, so I guess that's just a default setting. I have it set to record for 2 minutes, and I'm guessing whatever you set the daytime to, it just halves it, I guess. I don't know. Here's the first visitor that we had that we have never seen before on, I don't think we've ever seen this before on any deer camera, whether it was in the deer field or anywhere else. So here we are. Alright, before it turns around, can you tell what it is? There you go. You recognize it now, I'm sure. That's a armadillo. Now you're going to have to tell me, if you're familiar with armadillos, is that sucker as big as I think it is? Because to me, that's a big armadillo.
They're that big.
Well, I know they can get big, but I'm saying as armadillos go.
I've seen live ones
that's
that big.
That's a big armadillo. Well, I've seen live coons that look like little tiny sickly things, and live coons that make you think that there's a mini panda running around. I think that's a fairly good-sized armadillo, but we'll need somebody with more armadillo experience to tell us to tell us whether or not that's a big one or not. So looks like yeah, looks like people are in agreement. That's a pretty big armadillo. So I can't say I've seen plenty of armadillo on the side of the road, alive and dead. But I can't ever say I've seen one on our property. So that was kind of a neat little thing to see. All right, so in the second video here, the question I have for you to answer is, can you name that bird? We've had a lot of birds land in our field before, mostly crows, sometimes some songbirds like cardinals or a blue jay or even a mountain bluebird. But name that bird. So these guys, I'm kind of wondering what they're eating, because the milo has been long eaten by the deer, and any other seed that I put out there, I don't see how it would have attracted them to the area. So I'm kind of interested to know. I wish I could know more about what brought them. And there's actually 3 different videos. This is just the one I decided to show for tonight.
You want to know something very interesting? When we went and collected these cards this morning, I saw them fly off in a tree nearby.
Yeah.
You could hear them cooing too.
Yep. So yeah, lots of answers here. Mourning doves. Some folks do just call them pigeons.
Turtle doves.
Yeah. But anyway. So anyway, that's the first time we've seen that bird on our property. So I thought I'd just share it with you. I like showing you guys what's going on out there, and anytime we see something new. So if somebody hasn't already asked this question, which I think I saw one already, what about the deer? Well, I only got 2 videos of deer on the camera, and both of them were one fawn, not a whole host of deers. One of the deer cameras appeared to be functional, but didn't take any pictures. And the other camera, the card failed. There were only 3 pictures on it, and they were all corrupted. So I think the card had just failed. So it was a lousy week for the deer camera.
But at the same time, there's proof in the front yard, and our kids saw the mom and the 2 babies.
Yep. So that was a big deal. Yesterday morning or the morning before?
It was a couple days ago, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it would have had to have been at least Friday, because I was at work, wasn't I?
Yeah.
And Jennifer got the announcement came barreling through the house. That would be a good way to say it.
Before I was awake.
I was trying to avoid that point. From the kids saying that the deer and the babies were out in the front yard. So,
yeah.
And then there's an area that I am tilling up and working the soil and trying to level it, because I need a better place for all my tractor implements. And that fresh tilled soil had some tracks in it this morning, and it appeared to be some big tracks and some tiny tracks. So we think it was the deer and the mom, but it was very, very soft tilled soil, so there was no distinguishable track. It was just divots going through the sand.
They were too far apart to have been a cat, too small to have been a dog.
Yeah, and for as deep, it was like about, 8-inch, 10-inch deep soil?
Yeah.
And no belly dragging marks.
No belly dragging marks, so
Yeah.
it had to have been long-legged, so that's why we assumed that it was probably the deer.
Yep. So, alright, so there's the videos. And we got about 30 minutes left, so if you've come into the show a little bit late, please, if you've got any questions, make sure you're typing them in all caps so that we can make sure that we don't miss them throughout the rest of the conversation. So, let me see how I can answer some of these questions. Claudia had asked, how was honey harvest with the drought? Well, I don't know, just because of all the problems we had with hives. We had the one hive that got wax moths. Now the wax moth is typically a after the fact kind of thing. So in other words, the bees had already died off or left or whatever. I never saw a dead bee, so I shouldn't say that. They absconded or something, and were no longer there. And then the wax moths moved in. But either way, that hive was gone. So then the second hive got the small hive beetles and did something there. I mean, I would have never have presumed that you could go from a full hive that has every appearance of being a strong hive and have it get completely sucked out. I mean,
In like 2 months.
I mean, you're talking about what was a near 30 frames full of honey or brood or larva or pollen or whatever.
And so many bees in it that...
There's so many bees. It just packed. I mean, you couldn't pull out a frame without it being bees packed on both sides.
Yeah.
And this time, and then when we go into it, barely found 3 frames with either larva, brood, or honey / nectar and pollen on it, and a couple frames of comb to put into a nuke box. Everything else was bare. It just bare. Well, I say bare. Most of it had comb on it still. But nothing in it, and it's just really surprising. So
Big Creek Homestead wants to know if we've ever tried to trap bees.
we never tried to trap bees. We have tried to capture a couple swarms. We've tried to lure swarms, but we've never tried to trap bees in the way that I would use the word to trap bees. If we're talking about it the same way, I've heard the word trapping used to mean like if there's bees in a hollow out tree or in a building, there's a way to set it up so that the bees get out but can't get back in, and then when the bees start working in the hive you've set up over here to trap them in, eventually the queen comes to and you trap the bees out of whatever they were in. And depending on who you ask, I've heard people claim they have a 100% success rate, and I've heard people say it never works. So
There's a possibility. We might have had spraying in the area. That could have done it.
if we had spraying in the area, then there was never any sign at the hive. They would have had to have died wherever they got sprayed at. So
And that would have reduced the numbers.
yeah, is it possible? It is, but typically you, or at least what I've always heard, is that you end up still with a pile of bees at the front door, and we never had that.
Right.
Is it possible? Sure it is. Heck, I saw a helicopter with the sprayer booms flying just north of the house earlier today, so sure it's possible. Somebody else had a bee question in here as well. I know I read it somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Cockeyed asked, I'm a little concerned about getting bees. Do you recommend getting them? I really do. They're very expensive to get into. I'm sure you can muddle around a less expensive way of getting into them, but they're a pleasure just to have around as far as livestock is concerned. You don't have to go about trying to water and feed them and all that other kind of stuff. I believe you're in the good climate that we have, so you know, if you live up north, you got to provide more insulation over the winter and things like that, or in a very windy area, some wind blocks and things like that. But here for us, you just let them be, and so it's a very easy livestock to have.
Do you recommend them?
I do, yeah. I do think that if you've got the space for them, which doesn't take up much space, that you should have a couple hives. And I do think it is good to have a couple hives. That's pretty standard advice, is to have more than one hive, because then you can make a look at them and go, why is that hive so busy and that one's not? And little clues like that to be able to know, I need to look in that hive.
Yeah. We've loved our hives.
Yeah.
I love the honey we get too.
So, but the catch with that is, I think what I've learned over this season is that whether I'm going to sweat and feel like I'm going to have heat stroke or not, I've got to go in the hives more often.
Yeah.
So I think that's something you got to realize, is it's not just a situation of buy the bees, put them in a box, and go out there and fall and take the honey off, and you're done. I think it is something where you got to be in that hive once a week at the least, and really get a sense for how the hive is doing, and make sure, you squash that one hive beetle, and that one hive beetle could have been what was going to lead to 100 hive beetles. So the more you get in there, the more you can help mitigate potential problems. So
how can we get started keeping bees?
Find a lot of money.
Find your local beekeeping association.
Yeah, that's good advice. Most areas do have a beekeeping association, and if you're not into keeping bees, then you might not know that it even exists. It's not a big club that gets a lot of attention. So search whatever county or city you're in. If you're in the United States, contact your extension office, your county extension office, and ask them about the local beekeeping association. So, ours here, the nearby city, the county seat is Meridian, and they go as far as having a Facebook page and a website. So, you can find them pretty easily. But if yours doesn't have that social media and technology outlet, then you might need to revert back to somebody who would just be in the know, like your county extension.
At the very least, they can get you started and point you in the right direction.
Yeah. There's, believe it or not, if you're not into bees, you might be surprised by it, but there's dozens of companies out there selling the equipment that you need. Everybody's got their opinion. There's a company called Man Lake, which is kind of like the Walmart of the bee world. They've got it all as cheap as you can get it kind of stuff. But there's also a lot of smaller and family-owned places. I've ordered, we got our extractor from Brushy Mountain. It's with an R in there, Brushy Mountain. We also got some really good gloves that I liked from a company I believe was called Glory Bee. It's up in Oregon or Washington, somewhere in the northwest part of the country. It's a family-owned company. Nice gloves that have ventilation around the arm, so you can get a little bit more air circulation in our hot climate down here. But anyway, the point of the story simply being you can go anywhere you want, and just like buying vehicles, everybody's got an opinion on which brand is better and why it's better and all that kind of stuff. But like homesteaders do, plenty of people make honey extractors out of buckets and trash cans and whatever else they can manage to get to spin in a circle.
Just do yourself a really big favor and don't fall for the first person that says, hey, I got the cheapest thing you can possibly do or the easiest thing you could possibly do, because chances are they're probably trying to take you for a spin.
Yeah. So, when we bought ours, we went to the Bee Association, and they had a member who was a carpenter, and he built the boxes and built them for a little less than you could buy them from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But he used a very simple joint, and I'm not a carpenter, so I don't know how to explain it better. But the kind of joint he used on the corners, in my opinion, did not hold up very well to the joint that you typically would get if you had bought them and then fit them together and assembled them. So like the Nuke box we're using right now was something that we ordered from that Brushy Mountain company, and it fits together really well and feels a lot more secure than the boxes we had bought the first time. So.
Or have you seen that Flow Hive?
I've seen the Flow Hive.
Not something you want to get into.
I have yet to have somebody provide a review that was positive. And I've watched several, and I've watched it, there were several that were, hey, I bought this thing, I am a beekeeper, and I've been keeping bees for X amount of time, but I wanted to give this thing a fair shake. I thought maybe it really could work, and they went through the whole process of setting it up and the process of trying to extract the honey, and they had a lot more complications, it's have y'all ever seen those infomercials on TV where they make it look like flipping a grilled cheese is the hardest thing to do, or flipping a pancake's the hardest thing to do, or
it's usually a pancake.
Yeah, or cutting a vegetable is the hardest thing to do, and so you got to have this gadget to make your life more easy. That's really kind of what the Flow Hive has done. But then what it turns out to be is that the gadget's more difficult than doing it the way people have been doing it for the last 100 years.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people are finding out. So
but you'll spend a whole lot of money on this gadget and then find out that it's not worth the money you paid for it. You have to turn around and buy.
Well, when the Flow Hive first came out, when they were first running their Kickstarter and their Indiegogo and their GoFundMe or their whatever else, they got millions of dollars on multiple platforms.
Yeah.
But the first concern I had was what we already talked about, and that is people are going to buy these things thinking all they've got to do is set it up, and they go out there and turn a key, and the honey comes out. And it's so simple. And the whole time, meanwhile, they've got small hive beetles in there, or maybe they have, and I'm not going to pronounce these properly, so y'all just going to have to put up with me, but is it Nosema, or whatever, you all know the disease, Nosema, I don't know what it is, but
the reason why you normally have to check your bees every week.
Yeah, or there's foul brood in there, or all sorts of crazy things that could be killing your hives, or while you're trying to get a last drop of honey out, there's a mouse in there. But there's a lot of other concerns people have, like you can see the edge of the last comb of the honey, the last cells in the comb of the honey, but you can't see all of them without cracking the hive. So do you know whether or not they're all capped? Because if you understand how the bees work, the bees they collect the nectar, they turn the nectar into honey using a gland in their body, and then they excrete it back into the cell in the comb, and then they fan it. They air it out, and they let it. There's a culinary term for this, and now I can't think of it. They render it down, but they get the moisture content lower. And when the moisture content, when they get the water out of the honey to the right point where it's actually going to keep and not go foul, ferment. They get the water content down enough. That's when they put the wax over the top of it and they cap it off. And now that cell, that individual cell, is good honey forever. But when you use this Flow Hive thing, you can't see that. And so is half of it capped? Is a quarter of it capped? Is 95% of it capped? And,
right.
And I think most of us, if 95% of it were capped, we're going to call that good, and we're going to take the frame. But somebody who just goes out there and spends a bunch of money on this probably isn't thinking about those sort of things, and so we end up, worst case scenario, we lost a colony of bees, as far as the world is concerned. But as an individual, you're looking at being down several hundreds of dollars to get this Flow Hive thing. Probably frustrated beyond your belief because it took you forever even to get the darn key that they gave you to crack the hive so that you could even get honey, and all sorts of goofy things like that. So, when they first came out, there was a lot of hate that came out of the beekeeping world.
Yes, there was.
I never really hated the idea, but I had the concerns. If you're a beekeeper who's going to say, well, I'm going to use these Flow Hive frames, but I'm still going to open the hive and check the frames and whatever else. But then instead of bringing the frames into my house and uncapping them and spinning them and having to clean the extractor and deal with the caps and all that kind of stuff, I'm just going to turn the key and let the honey flow. Well, okay. I'll buy that. You're actually checking in on the bees and whatever else. But
I'm going to give you problem number 2 there.
What?
Well, while the honey's flowing out, you've got all the bees going, wait, there goes my honey, and now they're going to go after. You remember you were talking about them cleaning your extractor?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's one of those little cinematic things that always bothered me about the Flow Hive is, you take anything with honey on it outside, and it will be short order before it has bees there to collect the honey.
Oh yeah.
And so how do you sit there and fill a half-gallon size mason jar with honey and not have bees flying around you? That never made any sense to me. So
no, it doesn't make sense.
But anyway, this wasn't supposed to be a Flow Hive video, so let's kind of move on. Let's see here. Do you want to talk about your migraines for a minute? This one person asked about, are you using any injections for your migraines?
Right now we are currently trying to, we have been offered to take the Botox injections, but we're kind of scared of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's poison.
Yeah, it
is a toxin.
It is a toxin, and we are scared to death of them.
It's supposed to be a precision strike with the toxin. But the catch is that the doctors can't say, we have identified that this nerve out of the billions in your body is the problem. So we're going to kill that nerve. And because the body is very protecting itself, I don't know what the right word is, but the nerves repair themselves.
Yeah.
And so you got to go back and get it killed again.
And again. And again.
So at first it's kind of like this shotgun approach. Well, here's where we normally have to stick people to make your migraines go away. And so you get stuck. And does it make your migraine go away or not? No, it didn't. Okay, let's stick you somewhere else. And you keep doing this little guessing game, and then when you do figure out that it works, you have to repeatedly go back and get more of the toxin put back in your system. So...
And I'm extremely sensitive to everything. I mean, I can only have a cup of coffee in the morning because if I have two, I don't sleep that night.
Yeah.
I mean... He's seen me bouncing off the walls at 10 o'clock at night because I had 2 cups of coffee at 10 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, every single medication, every single thing I put in my body, it takes like a week to figure out how sensitive I am to it and just whether or not I'm going to be able to take it.
Yeah.
You know?
All right, so... Holly and Joey over there at the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener asked, any new vegetables you want to grow next year? I can't think of anything new that I want to grow, but probably growing in some new ways. So the area that we grew all the squash in so well this year, which, by the way, let me tell you, we made some butternut squash soup earlier this week, and it was to die for.
Oh, even the kids loved it.
Even the kids loved it. So that was fun, and I used some brown sugar on some of the ham that came from the pig that we harvested. So I had butternut squash soup, butternut squash from our garden, and candied ham from our farm. So that was a fun meal to have.
Oh yeah, it was.
Everybody enjoyed it. So, in a matter of fact, so growing up,
there wasn't a drop left either.
Growing up, I know I worked in a restaurant. You worked in a couple restaurants. Mm-hmm. Any of you ever work in a restaurant and seen how they get their soups in? Have you ever had to deal with that before at at the restaurant you worked at? Or you get like this big bag of soup that's frozen and you got to thaw it and get it back into like a soup consistency and then put it in the warmer. Well, I'm kind of taking a little bit of lesson off of that, and there were leftovers, and I got those scooped up into some Ziploc bags and laid them nice and flat, so I might be having myself some soup this week for lunches, so yes. Anyway, moving along, not growing anything new off the top of my head, but perhaps growing them in a new way. So that garden with the squash in it is gone. That is what is currently being leveled into an area for me to park all my implements for my tractor.
They want to know if you fed the hog butternut squash.
The one that we ate, or the ones that are here?
The one that we ate.
No. Did I say something funny?
I don't know.
Was the hog a butternut fed hog? No, but the sows that we still have are now butternut fed hogs because they got all the seeds and connecting tissue that were inside these butternuts and all of the skins once we peeled out the flesh. So these ones are fed now with butternut. Anyway, the main garden where we've done most of our growing this year, the place where we got our tomatoes out of and the seed from that Now I lost the name of it all of a sudden, but that squash that we got the seeds for Jennifer out of, the Silver Edge.
Silver Edge, yeah.
Silver Edge squash. That garden, if I have my druthers, which will all just depend on budget and time and things like that, if I have my druthers, that is going to become the main crop field. So if we decide whether or not we want to do a stand of corn or corn with some squash under it or whatever else, then probably do that there. What I'd like to see us do is finally move forward on a project Jennifer and I have talked about over the course of the last couple seasons, and get some small grow boxes around the back side of the house, so some raised beds up against the side of the house, and grow some vegetables there, some kitchen garden vegetables, carrots, things like that there. So probably not any new crops or new varieties of crops, but maybe growing things in a new way. Okay? All right, let's see here. Somebody, I didn't see this question earlier about the bees. I apologize. Do you have to burn hives that go bad? You only have to burn in certain situations. So I'm not going to try to list out the reasons for there are certain reasons for scorching the entire hive and calling it a wash. There's reasons for using like a blowtorch and scorching the inside of the woodwork. There's a bunch of different things. So you don't have to do that just because something went bad, but there are different degrees on how much drastic of a measure you need to take.
Very easy to Google that one, though.
Yeah. The Beekeeping for Dummies book ain't all that bad. You can get that and read that and go from there. Do we sell our honey? We have. I've only sold a couple jars because usually we don't have any. I don't have a couple 5-gallon buckets just sitting in the back room waiting to be bottled up or anything like that. I was kind of hoping that was the way this year was going to be, that we were going to get another 5 or 6 gallons off of this hive and be able to sell more like that. But
we were going to make meat off of it and everything.
Yeah. We covered the question about spraying in our area. I don't know where spraying was being done. I do understand that the bees can go 2 to 3 miles away in a radius from the hive, but I don't know of spraying being done. I don't believe we've had any spraying along the roadside. I did see the helicopter with the spray booms on it, but I don't know what they were after, if they were spraying a general pesticide or what. I have no idea. But we never had the pile of dead bees in front of the hive like I would have expected. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see. Somebody asked if those were spotted dove. I believe they're mourning doves. That was what I thought they were.
That's what I thought they were this morning when I saw them fly off out of the tree.
Yeah. I don't know of every different kind. Yeah, I mean, if my dad were in the room, I could ask him, and he'd tell me.
In a heartbeat, he would have heard them.
He said that's a mourning dove, and it's a juvenile, and it's 9th week or whatever. He's been a bird watcher for all his life. He's very good at identifying things.
Very avid.
Tina asked, how large is your farm? We live on a parcel of property that's just under 7 acres in size. So on that 7 acres, we have a couple different gardens, the pigs. We used to have the ducks and the chickens and goats and rabbits, and then that wasn't even 3 acres of the property. And then way in the back of the property, we've got a small 1/8 of an acre deer field for hunting in too.
About 4 of it is still completely wooded.
Yep. So what we are trying to do is get some of the underbrush out of the way, and so we can maintain things better. So like this week, Brandon was out. This weekend, Brandon was out there. Well, I mentioned this before, with the brush cutter, clearing out. The way I do it with him is, he's 13 years old, so I just tell him anything smaller than your wrist, go through there and take the brush cutter out. And then on our way back there to get to the deer field today, I was telling Jennifer that I was thinking, okay, I want to keep that oak tree, but that hickory tree, I'd rather keep the oak over the hickory, and so if I take out that hickory tree, I can fit the tractor through there and I can mow. So those kind of things are kind of progressing. It's just really hard to film and make it interesting. I have a question. How hard is it to raise ducks and how much water is required?
I can answer that one.
Go on, girl.
That actually really depends on what kind of duck you have. If you have raised Muscovies, that's actually what we were raising for quite a while. Muscovy ducks are the only non-mallard ducks that are tame.
Okay, domesticated.
Domesticated. That was the word I was looking for. But the catch being is the scientific community isn't completely set on the fact that it is in fact a duck. But they don't agree that it's a goose either. So it's like somewhere between a duck and a goose. On the other hand, if you're actually raising a mallard duck, you do in fact need water because they can't breed without water. Muscovy ducks, however, don't need water in order to breed. But other than that, ducks are actually really easy to raise, especially Muscovies. And Muscovies breed faster than rabbits.
Yeah. They really do. The nice thing about Muscovies, so the thing I would say about the ducks is you have to go into it with the mindset of what you would think of how much rabbits breed. You know, like Jennifer said, it's worse. So, I mean, you got to realize that they're going to lay 25 eggs and sit on them. And out of that 25 eggs, you might get 18 ducklings. And depending on your climate, they might do that 2 or 3 times in a year.
Southern Florida, they'll do it 4 times a year.
Yeah, it's crazy. So you got to be ready for that. All right, we're running out short on time. I'm going to pop out these last couple questions. One question, are you into permaculture? I was certified by Jeff Lawton on one of his courses last year. Or last year or the year before. I lose track.
Year before.
Year before last. So, yes, I'm into it.
He can train, he can design your property for it, hit him up.
But with very short time here, I'm just going to throw you a curveball and say that I do think permaculture has somehow found a curve that it's gone off on, and I think it needs to regress 30 years and get back to its roots. Because it's starting to fork off into all these crazy little things with people's crazy little concepts, and that's I don't know.
Whole nother ball game.
Yep. Is our property hard to manage money-wise because of its size? Well, I mean, like Jennifer said, the majority of it is still just natural wooded, and the most we do is drive the bush hog through it and keep a couple trails open for walking down in the area. So, I mean, do we spend money on the property? Yeah, we do.
A lot.
But, that's what we choose to put our money towards.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's people out there putting equal amounts of money into other things that we would consider frivolous.
Yeah.
But we choose to put it into our property. So, all right.
That's it.
Okay. Thank you all so much for watching, and I very, very much appreciate all your questions this week. That really helped keep the show going, and I apologize for not being more ready, but I think it was great to have a more interactive session this time.
It's just been a really crazy week.
It really has. It really has. So, all right. Anything else you need to say, Mom?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Thank you all so much for watching. If you're watching this in a recording, then come back here at 8 o'clock Central Time every Sunday and be with us live so we can answer your questions. Thank you all so much for watching.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.